recognition of gender in the new society is contributory to social development. The way we look at how social norms and power structures influence the lives and opportunities to different groups of men and women and has impact to individual success. Globally, more women than men are struggling in terms of equality. Gender and development ensures that diverse men and women can participate and can benefit from the development in a way that is equitable. You can subscribe and like for more sessions and updates. Most of the time, people often use the terms sex and gender interchangeably, but this is incorrect. Sex and gender are different, and it is crucial to understand why. Today, let us start the session by defining how sex differs from individual categories. When we say sex, this refers to the biological characteristics that define men and women. Sex can be recognizable on how body structure and anatomy shapes the external and internal parts of the human system. Sex assignment typically happens at birth based on anatomical and physiological markers. A person typically has their sex assigned at birth based on physiological characteristics including their genitalia and chromosome composition. Male and female genitalia, both internal and external, are different, and male and female bodies have distinct hormonal and chromosomal makeups. By the looks of the reproductive organs, both sexes are unique in a way. They function differently, and these functions are beneficial when both fits accordingly. Sciences defines their unique purpose, and how they interrelate their function is something that is very special in the procreation process. Scientifically, set of biological attributes differs from male and female. The differences are associated with physical and physiological features, including chromosomes, gene expression, hormone levels and functions, and reproductive anatomy. What it means to be male or female originates from physical characteristics derived from sex chromosomes and genes that lead to certain sex glands, internal and external genitalia, and physiological hormones. Both men and women naturally differs on biological setup. We can classify the difference from the genitalia, the internal reproductive organs, the scientific identity of their chromosomes, and the components of their hormones. This biological makeup separates the identity of men from women. These characteristics separate men from women. Women undergo menstruation while men do not. Women have the capability to provide lactation while men cannot. Women can naturally give birth and men could not. On the contrary, there are characteristics that only men can do. Men can supply sperm and have testicles, but women lack these. These are natural properties of different genders that is unique from each other. Even if science finds scientific breakthrough in changing the sexual anatomy, still the natural creation and function cannot be altered. When we say gender, this is not about talking physiological and biological makeup anymore. This is about characteristics of women, men, girls, and boys that are socially constructed regardless of their sexes. This includes norms, behaviors, and roles associated with being a woman, a man, a girl, or a boy, as well as relationships with each other. As a social construct, gender varies from society to society and can change over time. Meaning, sexes are fixed, but gender will change from time to time. One can be conclusive with the sex of an individual, but no one can directly define the gender of a person. Madali nating masasabi na ang isang tao ay babae o lalaki Ngunit hindi natin tahasang masasabi ang katauhang bahagi ng kanyang pagkatao. Academically speaking, gender is flexible to both men and women. Gender is about the way people should behave based on their gender. As a person grows older, gender identity starts to develop with it. Gender identity is how you feel inside and how you express those feelings. Clothing, appearance, and behaviors can all be ways to express your gender identity. Most people feel that they are either male or female. Some people feel like a masculine female, commonly known as gays, or a feminine male, commonly known as lesbians. Some people feel neither male nor female. These people may be labeled as members of the LGBTQ+ community. Whether we like it or not, research has proven that feelings about gender identity begin as early as age 2 or 3. Most societies tend to stereotype women as wives, mothers, and consumers, and men as breadwinners, public figures, and producers. When societies brand a person accordingly to what they expect one to behave, gender bias happens. Gender bias occurs when one individual consciously or unconsciously attributes certain attitudes and stereotypes to another person or group of people. And these ascribed behaviors affect how the individual understands and engages with others. This sexual division of labor is called production-reproduction distinction. Production is viewed as a man's responsibility. This system boxes men to take full responsibility of the family needs. This dictates that men should find job and work to feed his family. Kapag ikaw ay lalaki, kailangan mong makahanap ng magandang trabaho kasi ikaw lang ang inaasahan ng iyong pamilya. On the other hand, reproduction is viewed as women's responsibility. This boxes women to become full-time housewives who will take full responsibility of taking care of their homes and their children. Women are viewed as plain wife with less economic value. Nakakahon ang babae sa paniniwalang wala siyang kayang gawin sa kanyang buhay. The most basic and common element in the contemporary gender systems is a difference in gender roles. Gender roles are societal perceptions to the assignment to women of the primary responsibility for caring for the children and the home, and to men of the task of providing the income on which their families live. Dahil sa sex-gender system, nakakahon ang konsepto sa kung ano ang nararapat sa isang babae o ano ang nararapat sa isang lalaki. Sex segregation occurs in a society where jobs are determined as to which are appropriate for men and which are for women. In most realities, jobs requiring tougher decisions are given as opportunities for men, and technical jobs requiring lesser efforts are given for women. Ang pananaw na ito ay nagbigay ng mas malaking hamon sa pagpapabuti ng mga individual na layunin at personal na tagumpay ng bawat lalaki at babae. Different expectations about the way men and women are supposed to behave are everywhere. But it's particularly frustrating when they are treated differently for exhibiting similar behaviors. The question is, how did gender inequality start? In our society, there are several institutions that affect gender power relations. Our homes, our families, our school, the industries, the church, and the social media contributes to gender fairness or gender biases. The family, as the basic unit of society, has the most influential power that could either create gender bias perceptions or gender empowerment. It is within the family where children could learn the sense of balance between men and women, or they could learn gender divisions in terms of authority and power. Parents' role is very critical in treating children within the family because what they see and learn from their homes will be carried to their own families and communities when they grow. Let us take a look at how most of our families see roles and responsibilities at home. Oftentimes, our children will see that the father is the one responsible for the material well-being of the wife, children, and elderly dependents, while the mother is responsible for the emotional and spiritual welfare of the family. There are even instances that parents encourage sex and gender divisions at home. Minsan, sasabihin ng magulang, dahil ikaw ay lalaki, ito ang mga gawain mo kasi ikaw ay malakas, so patunayan mong ikaw ay isang tunay na lalaki. Ikaw naman bilang isang babae, kailangan mong matuto ng gawain ito kasi ikaw ay babae. Kailangan mong matuto upang magampanan mo ang iyong tungkulin sa iyong magiging asawa at mga anak pagdating ng panahon. And by that way of introducing concepts, these children grow up thinking that there is always division of tasks between men and women, believing that one cannot do it because it is the responsibility of one gender. Most people or even parents associated colors with gender. Blue are commonly associated to men and pink are associated to women. And if there are interchanging of colors that happens, people will react to a child or a person's gender of a different connotation. Saan ba nagsisimula ang paniniwalang ito? This boils down to how families and parents treat their children and put some interpretations of colors and gender. Stereotyping happened first in the family, where parents and children are to choose what is being said as appropriate colors for men and for women. Ang palaisipan ngayon, paano nakakaapekto ang kulay sa katauhan ng isang tao? Anong konsepto at paniniwala ang nagsasabi na ang bawat kulay ay kumakatawan sa pagkatao ng isang lalaki o isang babae? At kung sakaling magpapalit ng kulay ayon sa pinag-isang paniniwala, mag-iiba kaya ang kanilang pagkalalaki o pagkababae? Clothes are even misinterpreted by some family members as to what are for boys and for girls. Although in today's time, more and more parents are becoming open and modernized, but there are still families who believe that only boys should wear pants. And if girls will wear pants, they already pose misconceptions about their identity. Although at some circumstances, there are actually outfits that are good only for men or for women. But there is no need to put association of gender stereotyping and clothing. There is no problem actually on what you wear. The problem lies on how a person take it and associate it with gender bias perceptions. Oftentimes, the fairy tales that children grow up would allow them to believe that there are only kings and princes who are men and are superior than women who are queens and princesses. Fairy tales featured kings and princes who possess powers, while queens and princesses are just women who follow orders. Kings and princes always highlights how they rescue their queens and princesses because these women are weaker than men and they need kings to rely on. Basically, some of these show bias melodramas. Parents sometimes pose misconceptions in giving toys to children. Most men believe that guns are only for boys and dolls are always for girls. Even parents would reprimand their children if they see that toys are being switched according to how they see what toys are for boys and for girls. Ang aking tanong, kapag ang babae ba naglalaro ng baril-barilan, nag-iiba na ba ang kanyang pagkatao? O kung ang lalaki naglalaro ng bahay-bahayan, nagiging masama ba siya o magiging masama ba siyang tao paglaki niya? Ito ang mga pangyayaring kadalasan nakikita natin na naging realidad sa lipunan. Oftentimes, the fairy tales that children grow up would allow them to believe that there are only kings and princes who are men and are superior than queens and princesses who are women. Most fairy tales featured kings and princes who possess powers, while queens and princesses are just women who follow orders. Kings and princes always highlights how they rescue their queens and princesses because these women are weaker than men and they need kings to rely on. Basically, this shows biased melodramas. Parents sometimes pose misconceptions in giving toys to children. Most men believe that guns are only for boys and dolls are always for girls. Even parents would reprimand their children if they see that toys are being switched according to how they see what toys are for boys and for girls. Ang aking tanong, kapag ang babae ba naglalaro ng taril-tarilan, nag-iiba ba ang kanyang pagkatao? O kung ang lalaki maglalaro ng bahay-bahayan, magiging masama ba siyang tao paglaki niya? Ito ang mga pangyayaring kadalasang nakikita natin na naging realidad sa lipunan. Who says toys are made only specifically for boys or specifically for girls? There are still parents who puts division between boys and girls when it comes to choosing playmates. Some do not allow their children to mix with playmates of opposite sexes or mixed sexes because they have this thinking that gender formation might be influenced by their playmates. May ibang mga magulang na minsan napapagalitan ang mga anak dahil nakikipaglaro sa ibang kasarian. Ang akala tuloy natin ang pagiging kaiba ng isang tao ay sakit na nakakahawa. Gender is even a personal choice. When children grow up, they choose the genders they like. Ang isang lalaki o isang babae, paglaki niya, hindi natin mapipigilan kung ano ang pipiliin niyang katauhan. Our schools have the second responsibility in taking bold steps in shaping gender equality. Our textbooks, the language, the curriculum itself, the learning materials, the career options should make clear connections to gender and development. In nursery and kindergarten classes, boys and girls are taught what toys and games are appropriate for their gender. Heavy blocks, trucks, airplanes, and carpentry are given for boys, while dolls and homemaking equipment are for girls. Some teachers think that home economic curriculum are designed for women. They even say ang mga gawain sa home economics ay halos daw puro pambabae. My question is, paano nagiging pambabae ang mga gawaing itinuturo sa home economics tulad ng paglilinis ng bahay at paligiran, paghahanda at pagluluto, pagtatahi ng mga nasirang damit at pag-aayos ng sarili at kaniyang mga kagamitan? Ibig sabihin ba dahil siya ay lalaki, pwedeng hindi na siya maglinis, magluto, mag-ayos ng bahay kasi nagiging unfair ito sa kaniyang kasarian? Sino nga ba ang nagtuturo na may trabahong sadyang para sa mga lalaki at para sa mga babae? So, if teachers do not understand the role of education in shaping gender and development, what will education in our society will look like? And what kind of generation will be produced? Eventually, we will produce more stereotypes in our society. The way our teachers greet our learners and divide them according to sex shows bias. For example, greeting them separately emphasizes the differences between males and females. Meron pang ibang mga paniniwala. Most believe on the notion that males excel in math, science, and technology, and women excel in arts. These are two of the many cultural beliefs and cultural influences that are passed down through generations, and until now, it is difficult to detach. The idea that boys and girls are naturally better at certain things are still existing in our schools. Most of the time, teachers are even comparing performance between boys and girls. In classroom practices, teachers often do these things. They call on boys more often and spend more time with them. They ask boys with more challenging questions, specifically when teachers saw that boys started to become unruly, or they even wait longer for boys to answer because teachers wanted them to answer. In some cases, teachers urge boys to try harder, constantly telling the boys that they can do it, while for girls, when they answer, it's enough already. Teachers also brand girls as talkative and boys as naughty. Basta babae, matabil yan. Kapag lalaki, pilyo yan. And this is always a classroom reality. Learning materials in school have impact to gender formation of our children. The textbooks are sometimes underscoring the appropriate task for males and females. Household chores are even misleading, as images post ask for only boys and girls. When children will see these pictures, they will grow up bringing these thoughts that there are always certain household works for men and certain household chores for women. Textbook images also sometimes trigger inequality among our learners. The pictures will sometimes favor only one persona, and even sample of professions are associated with sexes or genders. Kapag doktor, lalaki; kapag nurse, babae; kapag pilot, lalaki; kapag pulis, mas angkop sa lalaki; kapag teacher, babae; kapag dentist, lalaki; at kapag fire officer, lalaki. These are proliferating within the bounds of our learning materials in schools, and that will lead to confusion for our learners. The church also influences how young children see inequality as they grow up. It is common that hierarchy of church leaders are men. More men are even serving the altars than women. It is good now that there are altar servers who are women, but still, women are outnumbered by men. We cannot blame that because biblically and historically, men are more recognized than women, and it becomes traditional that we're passed on to generations. Now, churches have been involving women, but again, there are fewer women leaders than men. Media nowadays has become a common platform of expression and communication. In any forms, men are proportionally represented by media more often compared to women. When we look at advertisements, radio and TV programs, news articles and highlights and other forms, more men dominates the time slot rather than women. In films, we will see that more men are always in the front lines and women are just supporting actors which plays weak roles who are too dependent on men. There are even films in the past that used women on central roles and subtle character. In media, the society looks at men as a powerful image who will catch all the attentions and authority. The society always considered ideal men as sexy when he has bigger biceps, has six-pack abs, has manly looks, and gorgeously handsome. Minsan, nakikita lang natin ang laki ng katawan, pero hindi natin nakikita na ang mga lalaki ay meron ding kahinaan. Lalaki kasi siya yun minsan ang ating pangangatwiran. However, women are in contrary. The society always accepts women who are sexy when they have smaller waist, they are sexy only when they are thin, they are attractive when they are white, or they have white skin, and they are beautiful when they look like a Barbie. And when women are beyond the prescribed looks and capacity as expected by the stereotypes, these women will become subject to bullying and body shaming. Hindi na natin nakikita ang tunay na kagandahan ng isang babae dahil tayo'y nakasentro sa kung ano ang gusto nating makita sa panlabas na kaanyuan at hindi ang kanyang katauhan bilang isang mabuting babae. Sports is dominated by men because most believe that men could transmit powerful ideas about manliness and masculinity. Men as an athlete is considered as big, strong, gutsy, and brilliant. And most often, men are called by their last names, and they are very hooked to popularity when their last names are called. There is also this reality that most men are fond of sports which are somehow showing violent masculinity. Men are likely to praise athletes who continue to play while injured. They love retelling and sharing stories of athletes, emphasizing language of conflict and war to describe the action or even demonstrate violence and aggression as exciting and rewarding behavior. Isang halimbawa nito ay mga pisikalang sports. Kapag nataob ang kalaban, nagalusan, hindi na makahinga, nasuntok, napuruhan, nasaktan, na-knockout, at pilit pa na lumalaban pa rin, parang ang saya ng mga kalalakihan. After the contest, all they have to say is, that is sports, and that is part of the game. But the question is violent masculinity acceptable? When it comes to sports, only 2% of women occupy the sports airtime. When news is delivered, sports announcers, famous of their boisterous, colorful commentary, seem to rein in their humor and enthusiasm as soon as female athletes are on screen. Women athletes are more plugged as panicked, fatigued, weary, and vulnerable. What comes worse is that photos of women are being sexualized and emphasizes the beauty rather than the game. Men are always presented in media as successful and have good life. Men are mostly the symbol of shaping the future because they are branded always as firm, decisive, strong, and always possess leadership qualities. The media often portrays the successful male businessman, family man, or respected leaders as fit, lean, and preferably buff. Thus, the typical male in our society is somewhat brainwashed by the advertisers who believe that they will be more respected, admired, and rewarded if they maintain a physically fit body that appears both muscular and lean. However, women are misinterpreted as gauged by their ability to catch a man or an eager male companion. Most of their advertising are focused on slenderness, dieting, and attaining a feminine ideal. Most beer advertisements also use images of women who are defined as sexy by using photographs that expose too much parts of the body. Men were more likely to believe that men have more rights to job than women. The society also believed that men are better business executives. Women are perceived as weak scientific leaders and are stereotyped as not possessing the innate talent that is required in some field. These and other gender stereotypes may explain why women are less represented on editorial boards and even their work is less likely to be cited. In business and marketing, most men penetrates the business operations and executive positions rather than women. Most men are higher in company positions and there are outnumbered women who heads the companies. There are even more cases of women who are subjected to trafficking and sexual harassment. When it comes to executive and legislative positions, more and more men became the members of this policy-making body compared to women. Women become outnumbered in political participation and representation. The society believed that men are better political leaders and that men are more strategic and firm than women. In our country, only 18% of women are part in the local politics circle. Because of uneven and unjust gender power relations, women and men are boxed into situations which constrain their capacity to do and their capacity to be. Nakakahon ang bawat babae at lalaki sa kung ano ang idinidikta ng lipunan. Both men and women have been curtailed the freedom they supposed to choose and decide on matters pertaining to improvement of life because they are controlled by the misconceptions that surround their community. Their capacities are becoming slimmer because the society dictates them what to do and what should be. When we control the capacity to do of our men and women because of gender bias, we prevent them to grow and be productive and satisfy work, to enjoy nature and the natural environment, to procreate and rear children, to care for others, and to travel in search of opportunities. Sa pagkakahon natin sa bawat babae at lalaki sa ating lipunan, nananatili silang takot na maipakita ang kanilang kagalingan at kahusayan dahil natatakot silang mapuna dahil sa kakaibang katauhan na kanilang ipinapakita na hindi tanggap ng karamihan. When we control the capacity to be of our men and women because of gender bias, we deprive them to be knowledgeable and skillful, to be healthy, to be confident of their own abilities, to be comfortable with achievements, live in independence, and express their power. Sa takot na hindi matanggap ng lipunan ang kanilang kaibahan, mananatili silang nakakulong sa walang katuturang paniniwala. If our society controls our men and women, then they will not grow accordingly. So, what are the gender issues now? And how would we allow ourselves to understand gender issues and concerns? We have to understand that gender issues and biases affect women more than men. It also affects men who are different in the way the society expects them to be. These are the issues that women were genderized. Number 1, marginalization. In the economic sphere, little opportunities are given for career advancement because most trainings are available or accessible to men only. Although most women we know are empowered individuals, but there are more women out there who are suffering from any forms of abuse and marginalization. Number 2 is subordination. In political sphere, few women are involved in decision-making, including at home. Only 10% are women in most legislations, and promotions are slow. Even some leadership positions are not for women. Number 3 is gender stereotyping. Kinakahon ang mga babae. Most of them serve only as assistant to men's place, role, or work, which prevents women from full enjoyment of rights and expression of her talents. Number 4 is multiple burden. Women must still do the household chores after the long 8 hours in the office. Men are not expected to do housework, or some do housework, but only when they want to. If we continue making our women subjected to gender bias, this will likely result to violence against women. This includes all forms of gender violence, which drives women constantly in fear of abuse, where their freedoms are curtailed and rights were shut off. In the pursuit of achieving gender equality, the focus is how to remove barriers for the inclusion of women and other forms of genders, how to empower them, how to ensure that both men and women, regardless of gender, can gain access to health, economic, educational, and other opportunities. Since inequalities are often created by unequal power dynamics between men and women, efforts that shift these dynamics encourage behavior change and engage men and women as allies and must be central to making progress on achieving gender equality. We must understand that it's not only women who are suffering from biases and wrong thoughts. Men also along the way are being judged with fair notions coming from the different units of the society. The society believes that men are inherently aggressive and violent, that they don't feel pain or incapable of experiencing human relations, that they are inherently expressive in their sexuality and that need closeness, reassurance, and attention. In the contrary, men as human beings have also their soft spot and weaknesses that needs considerations. What will happen to our men and women who are controlled by our biased society? Our men and women will no longer build self-determination and self-actualization. Self-esteem becomes low. There might be lack of self-confidence and eventually do not set higher goals. We need to understand that our society today is not just about men and women. We have brothers, sisters, friends, colleagues, relatives who belong to other genders. And we need to respect their choices in the way they live and enjoy their freedom. Walang masama kung ikaw ay isang lalaki, isang babae, isang bakla, tomboy, transgender, transsexual, pansexual, o anumang katauhan ang pinili mo sa buhay. Ang tunay na kahalagahan ng isang tao at ng kanyang pagkatao ay nasusukat sa kabutihan ng kanyang puso para sa kabutihang panlahat. To capsulize this session, gender issues are said to be deterrents to development. Thus, it is important to address them all in all spheres of life. Gender and development promotes equality of opportunity and treatment in all areas, equal access to safe and healthy working environments and to social security, equality in obtaining meaningful career development, a balance between work and home life that is fair to both men and women, and an equal participation in decision-making at all levels. Gender and development is about being faithful to the principle that development is for everybody. Justice and equity demands that everyone in society, whether male or female, has the right to the same opportunities to achieve a full, satisfying, and peaceful life. Gender and development is not about promoting war between sexes. This is not anti-men sentiment. This is not about reversal of roles. Gender and development is not only for women. This is about equality and equity, respect, and cultural revolution. We are all entitled to live free and equal. We are all advocates of human rights, equality, peace, dignity, justice, and freedom. You may subscribe for more sessions and updates.